So after a week of Nintendo Directs and finding a way out, we're finally finding our way to covering these sales numbers. It's Byron, it's Slade.
That's right. And we're going to cover the Nintendo sales numbers today and go over Nintendo's long-term future plans.
Yeah. So
let's get into it.
Yeah, so first off, congratulations, Nintendo Switch. You are now the third best-selling console of all time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that isn't quite as positive for the company as Byron would have made that sound with it being the third best-selling console of all time.
Yeah.
Because the Switch and Nintendo as a whole kind of underperformed pretty bad this last quarter.
Yeah, so,
well, there's a lot of factors going into that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, shall we? First off, everything is down a little bit, from previous year, except the playing cards, of course. I will forever mention the playing cards for Nintendo are just skyrocketing, which is insane. Apparently, 42% of the regional sales for the past 3 quarters have been from the Americas, with 23.6% coming from Japan, 24.9% coming from Europe, and 8.7% from others. Interesting to see Japan slowly being overtaken by Europe as well.
Yeah, that is correct. Another thing, and we read into like an investor Q&A, we actually see a decline in American sales as well. So
yes.
That is where investors seem to be the most concerned.
Oh, yeah, and don't worry, we'll get to those investors in a moment, Slade, because the Q&A that released yesterday, or a few days ago, is crazy.
Yeah, we got a lot of spicy content.
Yeah, but first, let's talk about the business highlights, because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet went ham. We already knew it went ham, but we didn't know how ham it went. And
yeah,
it went.
Basically, Scarlet and Violet went absolutely fucking hyperbolic, selling 20.61 million units, which is the fastest selling Pokemon title of all time.
Fastest selling Nintendo title of all time.
Of all time.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the lone bright star for Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, Game Freak.
Yeah. Well, the OLED has sold a little less than 4 million units from last year this time to this year this time, which is pretty good, a 92.5% increase.
Then you consider that the basic Switch sold 6 million less units on top of decline in software overall. Considering, like, the crazy thing about this is when you look at the number of software sales, you have 7 million less titles sold this year compared to last year. That's with the best-selling Pokemon title of all time.
Yeah.
They really, really underperformed.
Yeah. I will also say Switch Sports doing better numbers than I thought it would. 8.61 million units. Splatoon 3, 10.13 million units. And Kirby sold 3.4 million units. Impressive. Mario Kart still doing its fucking thing. Still doing its thing.
6.3 million, and people wonder why we never get a new Mario Kart.
Xenoblade 3 sold 1.5 million units, which
is pretty on par for the series.
Yep. Mario Party's doing its thing. Animal Crossing, Battle League sold 2 million, which is, like, I guess on par with, like, Mario Sports Games. Legends Arceus 2.4 million. But yeah, 18.2 million in 7 weeks for Scarlet and Violet. Again, very impressive. Very impressive. Yep. Digital sales are up once again. We are slowly getting closer to 50% of Switch sales being digital sales. Increased by 21.5% year over year, from 40% of the portion to 46%. Crazy. Crazy stuff.
Absolutely crazy indeed. So, noticeably from the first-party software titles, Million Burgers, as I like to call them, notably Bayonetta 3 is absent
No, it's on there. It is on there. Very bottom, it sold 1.04 million units. Barely making it on there. So
that's honestly pretty depressing. It's a little underperforming in that regard. But we knew that, honestly, from the way this list looks and everything outside of Pokemon pretty much underperformed expectations. Even Splatoon 3, with its Japanese audience and with it being very popular and whatnot, still didn't quite reach the heights that Nintendo wanted to see them reach.
Yeah.
So, what does this mean overall? Well, we're probably going to see a lot more shoved out Pokemon titles.
Well, well, we still also have that DLC to look forward to. Probably announced in the next couple of weeks with Pokemon Day.
Yeah, be prepared to be absolutely sick of Pokemon, because they're going to start shoving that shit out like crazy. Especially now that they know they don't have to even complete the games. So, just be prepared to be absolutely disgusted and sick with Pokemon. 20
million. I will say happy for Kirby, though. Kirby and Forgotten Land is popping off for Kirby. Best-selling Kirby game of all time. Great job. Yeah. Great job, Kirby. Mario Party, you're catching up. You're catching up to 10 million. You're catching up there. Breath of the Wild about to outsell Smash Bros. Soon, which is crazy.
Yeah. I think the sales of Breath of the Wild are picking up in response to Tears of the Kingdom coming out.
Yeah, that anticipation. Months. Yeah.
That anticipation. So it's getting kind of like a second wind in terms of sales, which is pretty interesting, all things considering. I would consider the Breath of the Wild to be one of the must-own games on the Switch if you own one. So we're seeing that pick up quite a bit. Like Byron said, Mario Kart continues to Mario Kart.
Yep,
so
which
being 2 million sales lifetime.
Yeah, being the literal devil this fiscal year with so far 666,000 units.
Yeah, well, this quarter.
Yeah,
agreed. So like I said, 52 million units sold lifetime.
Yeah, god damn, that is ridiculous. And well, let's talk about, we mentioned it earlier, let's talk about them investors, shall we, Slade?
Yeah, so Byron and I waited to record this with the Nintendo Direct news, and then we had a nice little playthrough of A Way Out.
Yes, which one?
So the benefit of us delaying covering the sales numbers and whatnot, we actually got an inside look of the briefing for the results for the fiscal year.
Yes, we did.
Specifically a Q&A between investors and, the president and director of the company, as well as the executive officer. So, a lot of interesting inside information here. But we also see how the investors are thinking in regards to what they believe the future of the company should move forward.
So Slade, what are some examples of some of the loaded questions, as you were saying before we started recording this, the loaded stuff we have here?
Question one's actually pretty fascinating. They talked about how sales are weakening in the Americas, which is the #1 priority for investors, because these are Japanese investors we're talking about here.
Well, and plus the North America is the biggest market for Nintendo, as we demonstrated earlier with that graph. 40 something percent of Nintendo sales are coming from the Americas.
Yeah, so obviously that's their #1 concern. They want to see sales in the Americas to be very strong and to be improved, because that's where the base of Nintendo's sales and performance really lies, even though it's a worldwide phenomenon. Kind of got a nothing burger in terms of answers. They're well, I mean, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing sold really well as Skyward Sword and blah blah blah. They try to cushion it, well, no, these titles sold really well, but it's the real interesting bit of information is how we saw Splatoon 3, as well as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, perform absolutely bonkers in Asia as a whole. So, China, Japan, every Asian country, that's where the largest bulk of their software titles increased this year.
Yeah.
compared to last year.
Absolutely.
So, the interesting thing is the Pokemon titles did not perform well in the Americas compared to the other regions. So it seems like our, public outcry slash backlash was actually somewhat effective out in the West, but it didn't have an impact on Eastern sales whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of crazy considering that with the sales of the East, and all it took was for them to be the best-selling Pokemon titles of all time, or fastest-selling. I guess it remains to be seen whether or not they'll ever surpass Red and Blue, but I think it's on a very good pace too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on great pace to do that.
But
yeah.
They pretty much did that without the American base that Pokemon usually, or the Western base that Pokemon usually has. So that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, because Scarlet and Violet, just internationally it's sold well. I wish for the million seller overseas, it got broken up from Japan, Europe, and Americas instead of just Japan and overseas. Because I want to see what the European numbers are versus the America's numbers.
Yeah, because investors, I think that was their number one concern was, well, Pokemon sold crazy well.
Yeah.
But the Americans didn't buy Pokemon.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fascinating, all things considering.
Question number 2. Regarding hardware, you explained that sell-through during holiday season fell. But how did the demand for multiple systems fare? Do you expect a natural decline in sales for year 7? Yeah, because remember, we're heading into year 7 of the Nintendo Switch.
Which is pretty unprecedented considering the lifespan of Nintendo consoles usually goes from like solid 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Or so.
And it was basically just we revised mainly because the holiday seasons did not meet expectations in overseas market. Production constraints by semiconductors and all that were largely resolved in October of last year. And blah, blah, blah. But, let's keep going on this train, because these questions get harder hitting as we go.
Yeah, so we're going to skip question 3 because they're talking about unit sales and whatnot. That's not super important as well as that.
Question 4.
Yes. So looking at the sales of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Splatoon and 3, it seems that series with established popularity are accounting for a growth potential overall software sales. What's your thoughts regarding this situation? I would also like to hear how you plan to incorporate new titles with the potential to expand the user base, similar to Ring Fit Adventure and Nintendo Switch Sports, as well as titles from other software publishers into the lineup.
Yeah, keep in mind, Ring Fit Adventure popped off like nobody's business. I think doing 12 million units total. Insane. Crazy stuff. But continue on, Slade.
Yeah, so again, we got another nothing burger answer. Seems like Mr. Furukawa was definitely trying to avoid releasing any form of insider information. They're trying to play the cards very close to their chest. Which is a very
game industry thing to do, honestly, very recently. We know, Sony.
Yeah, you don't see this happen in other companies and whatnot. Well, other types of technology companies. They're usually quite eager to show off to their investors what they're planning.
Yeah.
So, now Nintendo plays their cards pretty close to their chests. And, long story short, we're going to start seeing a lot more... it seems like there's a lot more plans to release already established IP.
Yeah.
So don't expect shit like F-Zero and Star Fox and shit to come back. It seems like there's going to be a large focus on things like, again, Pokemon,
Splatoon, Mario, Zelda. Basically, the IPs that you've seen will continue to be seen.
That's correct.
So,
which, again, that's a nothing burger in regards to the news. We already knew that.
Question 5.
Question 5 is probably the most loaded question on here because this was the second largest primary concern was going forward, what kind of life cycle do you expect from Nintendo Switch? If the hardware sales gradually decrease in the future, will software sales similarly decrease? Or do you expect software sales to stabilize at a certain level due to the increase of annual players? please also talk about your pricing strategies for hardware and software going forward.
Yeah. So the Switch will be entering its 7th year, 120 million units. We believe that it is entering uncharted territory in Nintendo's dedicated video game platform business. Yeah, they're not wrong about that. Uncharted territory. This is very new for Nintendo, because normally these systems don't last, like, as the main system anyways, for as long.
That's correct. So, again, we got a lot of Nothing Burger news. They're talking about Super Nintendo World having its opening at Universal Studios in Hollywood for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. They talk about a bunch of like shit outside of that, which is kind of weird because they asked about hardware and software sales, and that's kind of the answer they got. So
yeah,
okay, Mr. Furukawa, whatever.
And also, we believe that both new titles and evergreen titles can create opportunities for new users to purchase hardware. Furthermore, maintaining engagement with the hardware can lead to the introduction of new software. December last year saw high, blah, 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 blah. As we continue the Nintendo Switch business over the long term, we have tried to preserve the values and prices of both hardware and software as much as possible. We do not believe that policy needs to be changed at this point. So anybody that expected, like, price decreases, nah, get out of here. Those aren't happening.
That's good. We are seeing price increases already, like we covered previously. But the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is being priced at $69.99.
Yep.
In terms of US dollars. It's also increased in terms of the euro and how much yen you're spending on the game as well.
Yep.
So overall, we already knew this was coming. Byron actually skipped the most loaded question. This is what I thought he was about to read off. Considering this question 3, considering the unit sales for the current fiscal years, it seems like it will be difficult to stop the slowdown of hardware sales just by releasing new software. Are you planning any specific measures for the next fiscal year?
Yeah.
So basically, the investors were not happy with how an earlier question was answered in regards to what are you planning to do to fix hardware sales?
Yeah.
And the answer was, well, we're just going to release more software.
Yeah.
This is basically, they're basically condemning that answer. It's like, no, seriously, what are you planning to do outside of software sales?
Yeah. Yeah, basically they just say, like, economic challenges, looking back at the holiday season, the results were affected in part by external factors like the change in consumer behavior caused by inflation, diversification of entertainment choice due to the resumption of economic activity, especially in overseas markets. It might be hard to increase unit sales with hardware-related initiatives alone. That is my candid impression. In your question, you said just by releasing new software, but motivating people to play games for a long time and inspiring them to pick up new titles are both extremely important factors when it comes to maintaining the momentum of our dedicated video game platform business. Thoughts on that response, Slade?
Yeah, so obviously he's basically saying, yes, we are only planning to release software to fix our hardware sales. And no, you don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, they cite the economic factors. Basically, it's like, your question's dumb. Your question's a very dumb question.
Basically, inflation, change in consumer behavior, and yes, we're just going to release new software.
But I actually thought the question was a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question, actually.
And secondly, I think that this approach for Mr. Furukawa and Nintendo is actually wrong. I think software sales at this point are only going to maintain the current player base playing Switch right now.
Yes.
And I think software is kind of plateaued for the most part because, again, we're on the 7th year of Switch. I think if they want to see hardware sales increase so bad, they need to release new hardware. It's as simple as that.
That or potentially drop the price of current hardware.
Yes, a price drop. Which, spoilers, that's not going to fucking happen.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. So, Lamau. And then the final question, which was another interesting question. Although sales of new titles are doing well, sales are not increasing for second and third titles. What plans do you have to raise sales going forward?
So basically, this is third-party titles are not meeting expectations. We're seeing Nintendo titles do really well, but this was especially apparent with the failure of Mario and Rabbids. What's the game called again?
Sparks of Hope. Yeah, I believe we covered that like a month ago or something when Ubisoft released numbers, and they were like, yeah, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope underperformed expectations.
Yeah, that's the polite way of saying that shit flopped.
Yeah, well, compared to the last Mario and Rabbids, and for that one, I think there's not just obviously the current factors. I think there are other extenuating factors with specifically Mario and Rabbids, but
well, I think the novelty of Mario in an XCOM game has worn off.
Yeah, that wore off, and I think they took too long to make a second game.
But yeah, because I think at this point it was also competing with a lot of other fucking titles like Fire Emblem that just came out, as well as last year it competed with the Project Triangle Strategy.
Yep.
And just some other games that are currently on the market at the time. So pretty unfortunate for Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. But back to this question.
Yeah.
Essentially, they got nothing answer in terms of what they plan to do to help third parties have more success on the Switch.
Yeah.
They brought up communicating the appeal of the software of those titles, like advertising more maybe, but that's just about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's any straightforward answer in regards to that. I think, now that we're kind of done going over the question, I think the three main takeaways are investors aren't pleased with how the Switch and its games are performing in the Americas. That's their number one concern. Number two, they think that it's time to move on to new hardware. They don't think that software is going to maintain the player base, but it's not going to grow it anymore.
Yeah,
so
and
they think if they want to see like increase in hardware overall, they think Nintendo needs to move on to announcing its new platform, or at least do something in regards to like pricing models.
Yeah, and as you can see here, when the sales numbers came out, thwomp, the stock for Nintendo dropped from $10.58 a share to $10.17 a share, and then it just kept dropping. With the lowest it dropped was to $9.86 a share on Wednesday. It has gone back up since, but it has plateaued to about a little over $10 a share.
I think a large part of that's also the the Nintendo Direct coming out and hyping some people up as well. As well as the shadow dropping of like Metroid Prime Remastered and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like they did a lot to get their consumers excited for software and whatnot. So I think that's always something that typically happens with these presentations. The crazy thing is when we talk about like a decline in profits, note that the company is still profiting.
They're still making basically fuck you money.
It was a drastic like decrease in terms of like the value of the stock. Yeah. So I say drastic. A lot of you think, oh well, it was just $1 or something. Keep in mind that a 10-for-1 stock split of the stock happened in October 1st. Yeah. So that $1.50 is actually $15 per share. Yeah. That's how much value that they lost, which is a pretty big fucking deal, all things considering. So
yeah, and of course the last question, I'll just go over this one really quick. Thoughts on the next fiscal year business results? Mentioned extending the life cycle by releasing software. Several new titles. Tears of the Kingdom are scheduled for release. Probably now this might be a funny theory that Nintendo may have increased the price of Tears of the Kingdom because of the financial results, because websites had pre-orders for like a while on it being like $59.99, and then within like a few days of the direct happening, like it was showing $70. So maybe that decision was a very like last minute decision.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
All I knew is I predicted that it was going to happen at the beginning of the year because Nintendo couldn't pass up the extra revenue.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason for them to look at what the competitors are doing. It's like, we could get away with doing that too. So obviously they did. I was right.
Yeah, and basically,
whether
like, yeah,
it's a decision or not, it was a decision they were always going to make regardless.
Yeah, and basically, we plan to we plan to have, like, a Mario movie is going to maximize the appeal of the IP, more movie stuff, games for very important IPs. Kirby has performed strong. Scarlet and Violet, incorporation of online play elements contributed to the increase of memberships and further expand the appeal of NSO.
That's correct. Keep in mind that this fiscal year, there's probably going to be a struggle for Nintendo overall.
Yeah.
We're obviously at the tail end of the lifespan of the Switch.
Yeah.
They're not going to release another Pokemon title this year, let alone the best-selling Pokemon title of all time.
Well, yeah, they're going to be selling expansion DLC for it.
Because, let's be honest, if Pokemon Scarlet and Violet didn't, become the fastest-selling Pokemon title ever, this quarter would have been utterly disastrous for Nintendo.
Yeah.
And that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
And considering what an unfinished and terrible product it was, it's not a good look for Nintendo overall. I would say this is probably, in terms of quarter since the Switch was released, it's definitely the worst quarter of the Switch's lifespan. And I feel like it's only going to get worse from here. So economic factors are probably the largest reason for that. But
yeah,
I definitely think Nintendo needs to start thinking a bit about announcing their next console, even if it's not out for like another year or even 2 years. I still think they need to get that out there and then just basically consider the Switch kind of like just eat a dead year or two, the Switch, because I think they need to generate some form of like excitement for their next platform.
Yeah, again, I feel like I'm still good. I still in my heart of hearts believe we are getting at least the announcement of the next generation of Nintendo hardware towards the fall of this year.
Yes, I do think that's when they need to do it, is this fall. I don't think they should wait till next year to do it. I think they should just get it done.
It's very possible
to drop what it is, just announce that it's coming.
Yeah, it's very possible. It's like, hey, we're announcing it at the beginning of the year, but not releasing it till the end. That's very possible because it's Nintendo. Nintendo are gonna sometimes Nintendo.
Yeah, but no, this has been just about everything for
so
products.
Yeah, that's a lot of Nintendo. If you're sick and tired of hearing about Nintendo, well, maybe next week will be a lot better for you. It won't be as Nintendo heavy.
Yeah, so TLDR for too long didn't watch or whatever.
Yeah.
3 main takeaways. Pokemon went fucking hyperbolic. It's actually insane how crazy it went considering the circumstances.
Yep.
American sales are decreasing overall and everybody's mad concerned about it. And it's about time that we see the next generation of consoles from Nintendo.
And point number 4, no price cuts. Get out of here.
Yeah, no price cuts, only increase.
Or just staying the same, by the way.
Yeah. It's like Lamau price cuts.
Lamau price cuts? Lol. Alright. This has been Byron.
And this has been Slade.
And we will see you all next time for hopefully some non-Nintendo news this time.
Oh yeah.
God. Alright. Bye-bye, everybody.